the rise of nations from a financial standpoint in terms of prosperity and stuff. So this will be the introduction to that. There are more, there is more detail that you can get into where public markets are concerned, as with the other subjects as well. But I just wanted to kind of give you guys an introduction to the topic, and just to give you a different view to how we've been used to how markets are run, and how trading is done, basically. So I start with a claim that I believe that marketing is a myth. I believe that if you have good and open distribution, you won't need marketing. If you have a good product, even an average product, which hopefully I'll prove by the end of this presentation, you can make lots of money with that without the need for marketing. And the case that I'm making is that we don't have the distribution, and that's why we're forced to resort to marketing, basically. So I'm going to give you a case study. This is actually based on a real person. I've anonymized some of the details, obviously. And there are lots and lots of case studies like this. This is just one that I've picked out. But as I said, there are a lot like this, and you can see these cases all over the world. So here we have Halima. She's a single mother with 4 children, right? So she doesn't have a husband. She can't, if she goes into employment, then she's got to pay for daycare, somebody to look after the children. Then she's looking after the kids, but she doesn't have money coming in. And the welfare that the state is providing obviously is limited. So she wants to do a little something extra so she can bring more money in, so that she can either pay for daycare to get some help, or at least she can pay for additional things that the children require. Now, she's somebody that's very talented, right? She's very good at putting product ideas together. She's very good at figuring out what's in demand. She's good at speaking to suppliers, getting things put together. So she goes and she puts a product together, pink salt, something that's been growing in popularity over the last several years. Pakistan's a big exporter of pink salt. They have a lot of salt mines over there. And she's discovered something about pink salt. It has a lot of nutritional benefits over traditional table salt that we have, right? It's better for your health in multiple ways. It's got better minerals in there. It looks better. And so she goes and basically creates a supplier agreement. She imports some salt. She puts it into distinct packages, and it's ready for sale. So she starts selling it to family, just to test demand. She starts selling it to friends. She starts selling it to friends of friends, and she discovers that this thing is in demand. Like the people enjoy using the salt in their cooking. Sorry, I forgot to switch my. Oh, it is off. So they enjoy it in their cooking. They enjoy it in their people do salt baths and things like that. So they really like this product. And she's now thinking, okay, that this product is proven, the demand is proven. All I have to do to become a millionaire, to bring a lot of money in, I just need to go to the supermarket. I don't know what supermarket brands you guys have over there, but here in the UK, we have like Tesco, we have Aldi, Lidl, Waitrose, M&S, Simply Food, Sainsbury's, those kinds. So she goes to them, or she tries to find them, so that she can get this product on the shelves, and she can take it out to the rest of the country, scale this product up, and off she goes. She can start making a whole lot of money, right? So that's what she wants to do. Well, the problem is, the dilemma that she hits is, she first of all doesn't know who is she supposed to speak to in order to get that product to sell, right? If you try going to your local supermarket and you say, I'd like to sell this product, all they will say is you need to speak to the head office. So you try and get hold of the head office, you try and call them, you try and email them, you try and have a conversation with them. It's actually very difficult to get hold of an economic buyer there. And if somehow you manage to get hold of an economic buyer, because they're constantly overloaded with, they're constantly overwhelmed with people trying to pitch products to them, then you've got to find a way of persuading them to say, well, this is the product that we can get, I can prove that this thing is going to sell, et cetera, et cetera. They're only that really is kind of in line with their brand, they're not even going to sniff out your product. Basically, they're not going to take any interest in it. So even though this product is something that the audience wants, the consumer wants, and she tries to go down the mass marketing route, she gets just Facebook ads, for example, or Instagram ads, and so she is subject to their terms. They basically in the position of power with her. So she has no control in how this product is sold. Everything okay? I just heard a message. Shall I continue? Okay, I'm going to continue because I didn't hear anything, but okay. So that's the dilemma that she's in. So basically, she's completely landlocked. And this is the same case for other marketplaces as well, app stores. It's a very similar story on the App Store as well. You put all this money together to build an app, and you try and get the distribution on the App Store, and just can't get the distribution because you can't compete in terms of the marketing budgets or in terms of getting the exposure that you need for your app. It's very similar when it comes to YouTube videos. Anywhere where there is a marketplace, those marketplaces generally are privatized marketplaces, and they're controlled. And unless you have a huge budget, or unless you have some sort of prior relationship with the marketplace owner, you just cannot get the exposure that you need. So she's landlocked, as are many others that are developing very interesting products. So what I am presenting now is obviously the Medina template. Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam gave us a template in Medina which solves this problem. And he gave us something known as the souk, which is the public market. And this public market, it is neither privately owned nor state owned. So it's a waqf, it belongs to the people. So there's no private individual or private entity that can control the public marketplace. It's not even state owned, so the state can't regulate it as such. It's a waqf that belongs to the public, and it has its own rules that Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam gave us, and those are the rules that have to be followed for the souk. And an introduction to some of those rules are: there are no fees for a stall, so you don't have to pay to have your product listed in the marketplace. There are no taxes, so you don't have to pay commissions and fees to sell your product. So so all of many of the barriers to entry are completely done away with. So somebody like Halima, she can go to the marketplace, put a product on a stall, and she can start selling straight away. She can interact directly with her customer, and off she goes. She can start selling straight away. She doesn't need a huge amount of capital to sell this product. She doesn't need to advertise this product. She doesn't need to market product. Just go into the stall. The people should be coming into the marketplace. I'll discuss that a little bit more further down the line. And her product starts selling straight away and every single day. So the souk is designed to be a level playing field, right? These stalls are impermanent. It's first come, first served. There's no priority given to a bigger brand or somebody that's got a bigger marketing budget or any of those things. It's a level playing field where anybody who has something to sell. They just turn up. Whoever turns up first, they get a stall and they start selling their product. It's as simple as that. And Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam gave us this. Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam said that these two are sadaqah for the people. He was talking about the masjid and the souk, the public market. When he first went to Medina, he set up the masjid, and then he set up the souk. That's how important the souk is. That's how important the public market is for the ummah. This is what we saw in Medina, and this is how important it is for the Muslim individual. Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam said that 9/10 of your rizq come from trading, right? So I mean, I don't know how you would quantify this in the modern day, but perhaps you could say that an individual could earn 9 times as much as they are earning right now if they were able to trade instead of being stuck in a job, and if they were able to trade in the way that Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam laid out for us. If they were able to trade on public markets, they would probably be able to earn nine times as much as they are earning right now, because 9/10 of our risk is put in trading, and public markets are absolutely essential to that. And so that's what Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam gave us. And this is Ibn Khaldun. He spoke about, and I've paraphrased this, but he said, if you want to see, if you want to understand the state of the cities, he used to talk about things like decadence and prosperity. He said, look at the marketplaces. If the marketplaces are open and the trading is easy, then the cities were prosperous. And if that was difficult, if it was difficult for people to trade, then the cities were not doing very well. And you can actually see a lot of that. You can definitely see a lot of that in the US right now. The marketplaces are privatized. You've got Amazon and you've got Uber and these kind of things, and the way that is sucking the wealth away from the individuals, because it's not giving them an ability to trade, and it's forcing them either to go into a job or it's forcing them to live on welfare, and it's just clipping their wings. And you can see that the outcome of that on America right now. I mean, they've been talking about Texas being hit with snowfall this week, and they're having electricity outages and a whole host of stuff. A lot of people are queuing up outside supermarkets to buy, in queues to buy goods and waiting for welfare and things like that. It's really a state right now. So I mean, that's what capitalism does. It encourages private marketplaces. So and that's what happens to the economy when that happens. So in terms of the rules of the governance of the souk, they're very similar to that of the masjid. Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam said markets should follow the same sunnah as the mosques. Whoever gets his place first has a right to it until he gets up and he goes back to his house, or finishes selling, basically. So I mean, the main thing is that you cannot claim a permanent spot and deny others in the masjid. The rules are very, very similar to the masjid. If you imagine when you go to the masjid, if somebody was to block your entry because you don't have a particular brand, or you don't have a particular relationship with the person that owns the masjid, or if the masjid was owned by a private individual, or if you went in and you said, these 2 spots, they belong to me, and I'm going to put some money down to own these spots, and nobody else can claim these spots because my ibadah is more important than somebody else's ibadah, or these people are not allowed in because they're not of a particular caste or a particular race, or they don't have a certain amount of money in the bank, or they don't have a certain amount of credit, or any of those things. None of those things would be considered permissible in a masjid, and that same theme applies to the public market as well. You can't deny anybody entry into the public market, and you can't force them to put down a fee. You can't deny them because of how much wealth they have. Everybody has an equal right to trade as anybody else, no matter how big or how small. They all have a right to trade in the same way that anybody has a right to enter the masjid and pray. And you can't take priority over others. You can't say, well, I'm going to take the best spot in the public market, or I'm going to, this spot belongs to me and these people are out, just the way that you can't take a particular row or a particular spot in the masjid. So the rules are very similar to that of the masjid. And this is because it's designed to give us an equal opportunity to trade, just like we have an equal opportunity to do ibadah in the masjid, which is not what we see right now in the private marketplaces. We don't see that in the Amazons and the eBays. There's There's the algorithm that prioritizes certain products over others because of the feed. If you want to get exposure for a product, you have to pay for that. You have to advertise it, and you have to have a big budget to be able to do that. You have to share fees with the people that you sell the product with, and they take big fees. They can bar you at any time over whatever inane reason they want to bar you over. So they really limit your ability to trade. They do create this impression that it's a free for all, but the reality is these are private marketplaces. They will even copy your product anyway, and then boot you off and start out advertising you and beating over you that way anyway. So that's the difference between private marketplaces and public marketplaces. But this is why advertising was also considered ugly in Medina, because when you have an open marketplace like this, when you have a public marketplace and it's a level playing field, and everybody's got an equal right to trade, and everybody's therefore getting an equal exposure for their product, then you don't need to advertise, and therefore it becomes ugly. You do need to advertise in other places, on the Facebook marketplaces, Amazon marketplaces. These are the places, App Store marketplaces. You have to advertise to get some exposure for your product. But when that distribution is open, and it's open and it's fair, there's no need to advertise. Everybody has equal exposure, and so then advertising just becomes unnecessary. And advertising in Medina was considered very ugly. It was considered a very unsightly thing, because it wasn't necessary, because the exposure for everybody was equal. So it just wasn't necessary to try and force people to come and buy your product. It was open to everybody. So just a little bit more on the differences between what we have, the difference between the public market and the supermarket. So the public market is it's a many-to-many model, basically, and the supermarket is a one-to-many model, right? In which the supermarket prospers and the producers and the consumers actually suffer. Whereas in the public market, because it's a many-to-many model, everybody grows at the same time. The supermarkets, they are what we call an extractive economy. So what happens, the way it works with supermarkets is, because the supermarket has all the distribution and it has access to the people that are buying, it therefore has all the power, and it will actually squeeze both sides on the economy. So it squeezes the producers, and this is a very well known, very well documented where farmers are concerned. For example, farmers get forced to create crop. And they do all this sweat and toil. They do all this hard work in paying for the land, in looking after the land. They get up very early in the morning. They produce the crop. They have to protect it from insects and pesticides and insects and bugs, and they have to spray it with pesticides and things like that. And they have to protect it from fire and theft and just general natural consequences, weathering effects and all these kind of things. So they put so much effort into developing this crop, and it takes a long time for the crop to be produced. And then the supermarket pays them absolute pittance. And so sometimes they have to choose between, do we just give the crop to the supermarket at a loss, or do we just let the crop just completely die because it's not even worth selling it, or they just end up giving it to some friends and things. And these things have been happening in Spain. They've been happening in the US. The huge fights take place at political and at bureaucratic levels, at lobbying levels, because supermarkets just squeeze the producers. And that's happening in other marketplaces. It's happening in the app stores. You'll have heard about all of this fight that took place a few months ago or several months ago with Apple, because they increased their app fees, right? And so again, they were squeezing the app developers, and the app developers thinking, I'm going through all this effort to develop this app, and then you're squeezing me with extortionate app seller fees, almost to the point where it's almost not even worth me developing this app. And then for inane reasons, they will just say they'll just knock you out of the app store and say, well, you have got this in your app and you can't be in the app store. So Hey.com had this problem with Apple. There was Steam. I can't remember the name of the game producers. I think it was EA or Blizzard. I can't remember the name, but they had a game that was on the App Store, and they got into a fight with Apple because Apple wanted them to sell purchases within their game through the App Store, so that Apple could make the money. And because these guys went around the App Store, they just booted them out of the App Store, and they lost like millions and millions in revenue just like that. There's too much power in one hand. And then for the consumer, what that does is it results in increased prices because the supermarket has the power, so they can increase those prices. But it also, what it does is it reduces their choice as well, because there's a fixed number of shelves, and and the supermarket decides what they're going to sell. So you actually have a limited amount of choice. It actually reduces your standard of living, and that results in a very low velocity of money, meaning the the money that circulates between people, it just doesn't circulate very well. All the money goes to the supermarket, and the supermarket keeps prospering, and the consumer doesn't prosper because everything costs more money to buy, and the producer, they're not making as much money because they're being squeezed, and so it extracts the money from the economy into the hands of the supermarket and leaves very little for the consumer and the producer. There's very little institutional credit. It becomes, the purchasing power becomes less, and it results in poverty for the economy. This is harkening back to the quote from Ibn Khaldun about just look at the marketplace, because the net result of that, I mean, it's a lot of short-sightedness in the eyes of the supermarket, because the net result for the economy is the economy has become much poorer. Whereas with the public markets, the economy circulates. The producer is also the consumer as well. He can take his product straight to the public market. He can start making money on day one. The buyer can be a buyer of their products. So last time I spoke in Girard as well about Girard. In that talk, I spoke about how Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, he would sell products in Sham, in Syria, in the Syrian area, and then buy more products there and take them back to Medina and sell them in Medina. So the roles become interchangeable, and so you have much more scope to be buying and selling, and business is buying and selling ultimately. And so the velocity of money is much higher, similar to like how I explained the velocity of profit in Riyadh. So you start making a lot more money. There's a lot less stress on the individual, especially like for men who are supposed to be protectors and providers, supposed to be providing for their families. There's much less stress on them. There's much less burden on them, because they can make money in a much smaller amount of time, and they can be making money each day. You'll have all heard of this hadith or this account rather, that the Sahaba, they used to go into to the public markets. They used to make enough money just for the day, and then they used to go home and pass the stall on to another brother, to another Sahaba. And we've all been taught that that's the level of tawakkul that you should have, and we should all think like that. But one of the other things that we don't get told, the other side of the argument, which is actually the public market allowed them to do that. They didn't have as much stress, because they knew every single day, they knew they could just go to the public market and they would be able to sell. So they didn't have to worry about making enough money for the month or enough money for the year. They could just make enough money for today, right? Monday morning, get up in the morning, go to the marketplace, make enough money for the day, have enough money to pay for your family and the bills that you got to pay, and then you can go tomorrow and go and make enough money for tomorrow. It's a lot less stress. And when you have a lot less stress like that, you have a lot less fear like that, you make much smarter decisions. You're not enslaved, and you're much more free. And that time then allows you to do something for the ummah and do something for the for society in general, because you're making money in an hour or two, and then you can go and do something else. Whereas when you're forced to be in a job because you don't the trading ability is not open to you, then you're working 9 to 5 or 9 to 6, and then you got to come back and look after your family. You've got no energy or left to actually to work on the bigger things that the ummah requires, or do things for creation, basically. So it also results in natural credit formation. It increases purchasing power, and then it creates a natural growth in the economy, and the economy then starts to rise. And that's one of the biggest things that we saw in Andalusia, and the large part of what happened in the Ottoman Empire, which perhaps our PhD friend can tell us more about as well at some point, inshallah. But that's generally what you will see. And the public market, the souk, is fundamental to that. So just a little bit more in terms of the model, in terms of the differences between the public market and the models that we see today. You've got the wholesale market, where the producer produces something, he then puts a markup on that, sells it to the wholesaler, right? And because these are kind of restricted trade channels, right? and then he sells that to the wholesaler, and then the wholesaler sells that to the retailer, and the retailer sells that to the consumer. Now, to give you an example of that, when I was running my computer business about 20 years ago, this is before even Google came along, before YouTube came along, Instagram, Facebook, all of these. The way that this used to work was if I wanted to sell a PC, a computer, the average computer used to sell for around about £1,000, right? £1,000, £1,100 at that time. So we're looking at like 1998, 1999. And selling of computers really started taking off because everybody wanted computers. There were hardly any computers in the home, and there was a lot of this marketing that was done, convincing people that you need computers in the home for your children so that they can use that to study, and they can use that for when they go to university and stuff. So a lot of families were buying computers. This was before they realized that you could use computers for other things like buying on the internet and that kind of stuff. But the initial sell was for students. So obviously every family, they had a child in there, and they would start buying PCs. Now the way it would work, I would be a retailer, and I would have to go to a wholesale distributor and buy the components from them. So I might buy, for example, what's known as like a motherboard and a CPU and a case and stuff. And they would, like, a motherboard would, for example, would be like £75, £80, £100, and then the case would be like £30, and then the CPU would be like £200 or £300. And so then, because I'm going to build that PC, and I've spent that much money, then when I sell that, I have to put a markup on there. So it would end up costing me like £800 or £900 just to build the PC. So I would put £100 markup on that. Now, if I was able to go directly to the producer, so the manufacturers of the actual manufacturer of those products would be like Intel. Intel would make the CPU, Asus would make the motherboard, for example, etc., etc. Then I could have put that computer together for like £500 or £600, right? Then I can either create a £400 or £500 markup on the computer, so that makes more profit for me, and then I can expand my business more. Or at the same time, I can reduce the price, maybe half and half. I can reduce the price by another couple of £100, and that then allows me to compete with the other retailers. There were much bigger retailers than I was, and I wasn't able to compete with them because they were able to sell the computer for a lot less money than I was. So it was a lot harder for me to persuade my consumer to buy from me. And plus they were making more profit, so they could spend more money in marketing. I wasn't able to do any of that, but I couldn't go to the producer. If I went directly to Intel, for example, and I said and if I said to them I'd like to buy 10 CPUs, they would just laugh at me. They wouldn't even entertain me, because they would have a minimum requirement that I have to buy a minimum of, for example, 200,000 CPUs. And I can't afford to do that. Even with Girard, potentially, I wouldn't have been able to afford to do that, potentially. You have to put a lot of money together to be able to do that. I mean, it's not entirely true that you can't do that with Grad, but the point that I'm saying is that it's a huge risk that I'm undertaking. So I wasn't able to do that. And then the supermarkets came along. They got rid of the wholesale. They kind of joined the wholesale and retailer thing, and they went straight to the producer, and so they could actually squeeze the producer quite a bit and bring that product straight to the consumer. And they could have potentially bring the prices down, but essentially what they ended up doing was they just soaked up all of the profit for themselves while squeezing the producer and keeping the prices high for the consumer, as I said already. But when you have the producer, when you take these barriers of entry out and you give them a public market, and then the consumer can go straight to the producer, right? There could be another, at that time, China was really starting to take off, and you had producers of chips and motherboards and these kind of things. You put those guys together, and I could be buying those components much cheaper, selling them much cheaper. And if those distribution channels had been put together properly, I would have my business would have prospered a lot more, but my consumers would have been happier, much happier as well. And so there's loads and loads of, if you care to look, there's loads and loads of these examples that already exist today. The wholesaler retailer model, if you go and study how the retailers operate, the supermarket model, but this direct producer consumer model is very, very rare today. But that's the advantages that it creates. So going back to the Ottoman Empire, the Islamic city, this is what the Islamic cities used to look like. You used to have the castle, you'd have the main gate to the city, you have city walls, you'd have the funduk, which is the storage area for people that are selling their products in the public market. You'd have the masjid, and then you'd have the souk. That's the public market. So you'd have that in every city, in every Islamic city that was built by the Ottomans, and they would call these the imarat. Right. I'm just going to leave this on screen a little bit longer, just so that you can kind of take a look at it and study it. I mean, the presentation is available at a separate link anyway for you to go and study later.
Malak is asking, where is the 3D map from? It looks very good. He says, I need the source.
This 3D map is from my sheikh, so we'll have to ask my sheikh. I don't know where he got it from, but I'll ask him for you. He's the one that gave this to me, and he said I must show this. So I'm showing that today, but I'll try and find out for you, inshallah.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So as I said, when the Ottomans wanted to build a new city, they built an imarat, and the imarat is basically the mosque and the souk. So you have the masjid in the city, you have the souk in the city, and that becomes an imarat. So the Ottomans would go around building imarats, and that would mean that they were going and putting together a masjid and a souk, and you immediately create the environment that allows the individuals to prosper in that city. So that's why people would get really excited about the Ottomans coming up and opening their cities, I would imagine, because they knew it was going to give them economic prosperity, which they weren't experiencing in the cities that they were in, that were in the non-Muslim regions. And we're seeing a lot of that today now. A lot of that we're seeing, even in Muslim countries and cities, we're seeing that. So just to give you some examples of in history of public markets. This is a picture of the Grand Bazaar of Istanbul, right? I don't know how to pronounce this exactly, but I think it's Kapalı Çarşı. I'm sure one of you guys can.
Kapalı Çarşı.
Kapalı Çarşı. Okay, I have been learning Turkish a little bit because of Ertugrul, so it's very similar to Urdu actually. So obviously that means the covered market in Turkish. And this was built between 1455 and 1561, after the conquest of Istanbul, obviously of when it was called Constantinople at that time, and it was endowed as a work for the benefit of the Hagia Sophia Mosque to simulate economic prosperity in Istanbul. Okay, and just some details about it. At the time, it was 31,000 square meters of covered market space, 61 covered streets with over 3,500 additional stalls. There were 5 masjids, 7 fountains, 18 gates, and 29 hands or caravanserais. So caravanserais is a slightly separate topic, but it's where, if any of you have seen Ertugrul, the TV series, you always see caravanserais in there, where the traders would come to a city to trade, and the caravanserai would give them, the traders would give them a place to stay for a few days, and they would be allowed to board. They would get the lodgings for free, and they would get food for free for 3 days because they're coming as traders. So they would be invited to come and trade. So that's another thing that they would where the trading was made easier and was facilitated was through caravanserais, right? So I mean, I've seen this a lot in the Ertugrul TV series, I know in Turkey you have a lot of places, hotels that are called caravanserai, which, I mean, they don't follow the original caravanserai model, but it's just a remnant of what used to exist from before. So and that name is, the meaning of that name has kind of been changed now. It kind of just means hotel now, right? So other historic public markets, the Vakil Bazaar in Shiraz, that's another one. Here's a picture of what that looks like at the moment. The Bazaar of Tabriz, and the Bazaar of Isfahan, that's in Iran, I think. I forgot to put those 2 details in. So they're previous, they're markets that have existed before. So we have the details, we have the remnants of these from history. And talking about today, what we have today, we have Yiwu. I don't know if any of you have heard about Yiwu, but Yiwu today is the largest public market in the Chinese Belt and Road Initiative. Now, the only difference between this and an actual public, I mean, it's as close to what is considered a public market that exists today. It is actually a wholesale market. It's not quite a retail market. But in terms of some of the details about it, it's in China. And it's, in terms of geographical size, it's about half the size of London. It's huge. right? It's an entire city that is just a complete wholesale market, and they've very much reduced the barriers to entry. So it's not quite the exact same rules as what the rules of the souk should be, but they're very similar. They have lowered the barriers to entry, and that has resulted this is one of the biggest reasons China's had so much economic prosperity. They have 80,000 stores in there with 1.8 million categories of goods, and it receives 300,000 visitors a day, people going in there and buying wholesale products, and then selling them in the rest of China and selling them abroad. There's actually a white paper that you can find that was written by Dr. Wang from Nottingham University, and he gives a case study of a man who was in Dubai, who went to visit Dubai in the early, it was late 80s or the early 90s, and they were selling clothes there, like vests and underwear and stuff, just like for men and for children and things. And he went back to China, went back to Yiwu, went and to the wholesalers and started buying the vests in wholesale from this public market, put them into suitcases, went to Dubai and started selling them over there. And he was able to sell them much cheaper than the existing competition in Dubai because of this wholesale public market structure in Yiwu, right, that existed in China. And they were being produced faster, they were being produced cheaper. And so he was able to take advantage of that. He started selling them in Dubai, buy a suitcase first. And as he started making more and more money, and he started going back, he then obviously grew his business and made that a more permanent thing. And I believe he's now like one of the largest suppliers of underwear to Dubai, to the UAE. And he made a huge amount of money. It ended up attracting even more Chinese sellers to UAE in other product categories, electronics and sunglasses and a whole host of other stuff. And from there, they also started going. They were already, I think, selling to America anyway, but they started spreading out to other cities. And Yiwu is a fundamental contributor to that man's prosperity. So just looking at the Chinese case study, so the public market actually started in I think it was a little before 1982. Well, it says 1982 here, but there was a lot of policy changes that were implemented around like 1978 onwards in China that started putting things in place that allowed for this kind of economic prosperity. And obviously, Yiwu was actually set up in 1982, but it takes time. But you see, like around about 1992, in just a decade, you see how this output started going up. So this is the industrial output in renminbi, so that's Chinese yuan, right? That's their currency. It starts going up, and then look at the GDP of the country. It just starts going through the roof. Let's see if I can get rid of this. The arrows on this, it's not disappearing, but it's like almost 200,000 million RMB. So that's 200 billion, I think. 200 billion yuan, which is something like 50 billion a year in output, and something like 80 billion a year in divided by 7, it's about 10 billion in revenue. It's a huge amount of input. That's just from a public market, and creating that entrepreneurial spirit. And so within 10 years, completely transformed the economic prosperity of that society. So that was so we've done the past, we've done the present, and now we're talking about the future, what the future can hold for us. So one of the reasons why these private marketplaces, like even the App Store of Apple, the supermarket, like I'm talking about online now, right? Not talking about in offline. Mostly we've been speaking offline at the moment, but I'm just want to talk about the online potential. So looking at places, these marketplaces like the App Store, Amazon Marketplace, eBay, etc., etc. The reason why they've done so well is because what became really important on the internet was trust. And today what we have is, if you see the same product on Amazon and you see the same product on somebody's personal website, right? Same product, same price, maybe even a less price on the private, on somebody's personal website, but exactly same product, same offers and guarantees, and even a lower price on the private website. Most people will buy that product from Amazon because you already have a relationship with Amazon. You already trust them. You've already done business with them before, so you can trust them. So Amazon becomes a trust broker in that relationship, okay? And so because of that, they're able to take, Amazon is able to take advantage of that. They use that to their own benefit and to the detriment of everybody else. That they can use that to wield a lot of power over you, and that gives them a lot of leverage. They don't give you a direct relationship with your customer. A lot of people, perhaps even on this call today, who've tried selling on Amazon, you will know you're not able to create a direct relationship between you and customer. You don't even get their email address. You don't know their name. You don't know anything. All those details are only with Amazon. So Amazon has the relationship with the customer, and all those people are coming to Amazon, but they're not really coming to you. You're taking your product to Amazon. Amazon is developing that relationship with them. And as I said, they're able to do that because they're the trust broker. And so it's very, very difficult to go outside of Amazon and create a direct relationship with with the consumer, because the consumer has nothing to trust you with. Okay, and so these middlemen, they yield all of that power, and so in the same way as the supermarkets, because they're central to that chain of that supply chain, they make all the money, they make all the profit. There's a lot of people that are in this false economy, in this illusion of, Amazon it gives me a chance to sell my product on Amazon, and therefore they've done a wonderful job for me in allowing me to sell my product. But actually, Amazon is the one that's actually growing more and more. Jeff Bezos, Amazon has posted record profits this last year. Amazon resellers have not posted record profits, but Amazon has. Is because they are the greatest power in this particular relationship, because of the trust broker. Okay, so this is where the blockchain becomes very interesting. The blockchain, because it's a series of blocks of transactions, and because everything is taking place on the public, on what's known as a public ledger and a public distributed ledger, and because everything is what's known as immutable, you can't delete records. You can actually see all the transactions that are taking place in the public. So what happens is, if I, for example, and you can use this across multiple categories, so whether it's apps, whether it's a taxi service, whether it's selling inventory or providing a service, when I deliver a service, so say for example, I want to provide a taxi service, right? Say imagine a single woman. She's not going to jump into a taxi with me because she doesn't know me from Adam. She doesn't know how trustworthy I am. So she uses Uber to see my ratings and how good a job I've done previously, right? So Uber is the trust broker there. But on the blockchain, because even if I provide a taxi service to even one person, right? As long as I do a good job of that, as long as I don't mess about, I jump into the taxi, I take the payment, I deliver the person to their destination, and everything goes well, there's a record of that publicly on the blockchain, and it's verified. So it's not one of these gamed ratings. On Amazon, this news story came out today on this week on Amazon. Like, something like, I can't remember what the figure was. It was like a huge percentage, 100,000 a week or something. Reviews are being manufactured and they're being gamed. So they're fake reviews on Amazon that make you believe that these reviews are real and that they're to be trusted, right? But with the blockchain, that's a verified relationship. I can't game that review. So it's an actual record of an actual event that actually took place. So now I'm able to trust that, right? So another lady, she sees that. She sees, right, Khurram Malik, he picked up a person, not because they won't give away the actual personal details, but he picked up a person at this particular time. They might not even give the destination things, right? The beginning and the destination, but they will say, okay, picked up a person, it picked him up from the start of the journey, they dropped him off at the end of the journey. The journey lasted this long, and that went successfully, and they were paid, and everything went fine. And then perhaps the lady might also leave a review. But that's an actual record of the event. And even though it's just one, then you're able to trust that, because I don't have to rely on Amazon or Uber to actually be my trust broker. Now the blockchain becomes a trust broker, so I'm able to trust that. So then and the next lady can now hire me as a taxi service. So immediately, within providing one service, I can start selling more of my product. I can start selling more of my services. I can do away with Uber. I don't have to give 30% or whatever it is of my fees to Uber for driving people around. I could take all of that profit for myself. I don't have to be subject to Uber's rules and regulations. Okay, I can't be messed about. And because the blockchain's got a record of what's happening, if the consumer messes me about, they fraud me in some way, the blockchain's got a record of that. So I can't be I can't be enslaved by the consumer as well. So there's all of these things that the blockchain allows us to do. So that's another reason why the blockchain becomes really interesting for the future. And so we can do away with all of these public marketplaces like Amazon and Uber and Airbnb and eBay and app stores and all of this kind of stuff. You can actually, I think this is Huawei is going to start working on this pretty soon, but you can actually set up blockchain-based app stores where the blockchain delivers the app onto the phone. So you're not restricted to an Apple App Store or a Google Play Store, for example, or a Huawei Play Store. So you're having a direct relationship with your customer in terms of the app. So it gives you that direct relationship with the customer, and it takes you away from the control of the privatized marketplaces. So the blockchain is very interesting for the future of the public markets as well. So to end almost the penultimate point is, if you want to create a prosperous Islamic economy, you need a public market that's not a private market, that's not state owned. It's publicly owned. It's a waqf to the ummah, right? And it runs with the rules that are very similar to the masjid, and it creates a level playing field. It creates equal opportunities for everybody. It gives them the distribution that they need. It gives them the exposure that they need. And it gives them the trust brokerage that they need as well, a direct relationship with the customer, and that's how we can create prosperous economic cities. And the final point, because we've been discussing Qirad for the last couple of sessions, public markets are actually in an ideal setup. If we're going to reestablish Muamalat, public markets actually come first, because once you have the public market and you have the distribution available, then the Qirad agents that are putting the proposals together, they've got somewhere that they can actually sell their product. The issue that we have right now is, even if they're able to raise the capital via Qirad, their ability to sell that product is still quite limited because the distribution isn't there. And it actually makes it more expensive for the investor to invest in them, because they've got to spend the money on marketing and distribution costs, and it actually reduces the profit for the Qirad agent and for the investor. And then it makes the product more expensive for the consumer as well. So Qirad is still very worth putting together right now, but it's limited until we have public markets. So public markets to come first in the order. Then we have Qirad. Qirad, as we discussed and discovered last week in our session, will automatically necessitate guilds. And then if you trade in the dinar and the dirham, you are removing yourself from the overhold of the banks and from inflation, and and you are in control of your money, because the banks are not printing the money and they're not in control of it. And so you have your own you're trading by mutual consent. And that takes us away from the entire stronghold of capitalism, and gives us the prosperity and the freedom that we're looking for as Muslims. And that's the final point, and we are done there.
Actually, not short, but not very unintensive. Quite intensive as well.
Okay.
I mean, I have questions, but I think if someone wants to go before me, definitely feel free, because I think I'll take quite some time. So if you want to ask a question, please raise a hand on your computer, so I can, we can put a lineup of people, so we don't we're not unfair. Okay, Malik's putting physically a hand up, so please go, Sheikh Malik. تفضل.
I don't know how to raise my hand.
It's
Zoom.
fine. If you go down to like what do you call, to the chat, or like to the more thing, you can
Okay.
Other time.
Okay. Thank you, Ustad Khuram. My question is, I was just wondering throughout the presentation, how would this